Everybody shut it down. All right, we're gonna shut it down. All right, we're gonna shut it down. Everybody shut it down.
Ethnic studies as a discipline is one that arose out of a tradition of community re-education, and one that has its roots in the tradition of freedom schools that propagated themselves during the 1960s. It is with these freedom schools that this history begins because fundamentally ethnic studies is rooted in critiquing power structures and giving students of color an education that can actually represent their own history. While freedom schools taught tools and ways to exercise political power, ethnic studies programs teach students tools to critique and begin to dismantle issues of institutional oppression. Ethnic studies teaches through stories. Stories that challenge the Eurocentric indoctrination of our K-12 years. Stories of and for minority students.
All the black people who have struck at San Francisco State is to seize your power so that we can implement the 10-point set of demands developed by the Black Students Union and the Black Faculty Union and the black brothers and sisters that work in the cafeteria, the janitors, the administrators.
It was at schools like UC Berkeley, San Francisco State, and Cornell that some of the first strikes for ethnic studies programs arose in the U.S. Out of a vacuum for lack of diverse classes, the fight for ethnic studies began with student groups like the Black Student Union and the Third World Liberation Front began protesting their daily classes as a means of showing the administration that their demands for a more diverse educational experience and faculty dedicated to the pursuit of ethnic studies are not to be taken lightly.
Strike here at San Francisco State is very historic because this is the first time in the history of all existing colleges in the United States that we have dissolved class barriers between people of the third world.
While some might argue that it was the militancy and forcefulness of the Black Panther Party in occupying campuses that proved most effective in winning rights for ethnic studies programs. But these efforts would have proved futile without teachers and others workers' unions coming out to support the protesters. But these relationships work both ways, with many student protesters actively voicing support for non-student workers' organizations.
A banker, when he forfeits closure on a mortgage, does not compromise. A factory that automates itself into the oncoming cybernetic society does not compromise with the workers. We are not going to compromise what is essential for us to exist and survive in the ways that we want to. We want the liberation of our people.
Our statement was that the war in Vietnam is racist. It is the war that crackers like Johnson are using black soldiers and poor white soldiers and Mexican soldiers as dupes and fools to fight against people of color in Vietnam who have never called black people nigger. And because the Black Panther Party stands against the Vietnam War, in fact, we are demanding victory. We are calling for victory of the National Liberation Front, and because of our political stand, which is our right, our constitutional right, we're being attacked by the power structure of this college. And
when talking about the ways that ethnic studies was won on college campuses across the U.S., it is impossible to not also mention the ways that cops and community defense have been used as a strike-breaking force and a force of upholding the status quo.
Yes, they brought fire hoses and ran them for about 10 minutes on all the girls in the cell.
They tried to hit her over the head with the hose, and they hit me. I put my hands over her head to protect her, and they hit me in the thumb and broke my thumb with the nozzle.
We've all anticipated this. There's going to be a great deal of this kind of harassment, of placing bombs around the buildings, of attacking the homes of professors who are prominent for their views in support of the administration.
As the campus community began to struggle together, real human relationships replaced the old, sterile, authoritarian relationships of the past. Began to see that they too were oppressed by the same system that the third world students were fighting. They were all people without power, without the power to affect the institutions that they were working under.
shut it down. On strike, we're gonna shut it